a lot of fun. So this lecture, or this discussion on the Broadway Babes of the 1940s, I want us to have fun with it. We'll enjoy the clips, and let me get the thing rolling on. So hold on one moment. I just have to get it going. And please mute yourself. I hear some talking in the background. You can unmute later, but I would rather us all go with this at the same time. Okay. So that's just a bunch of Broadway babies, but we're going to start with Nanette Fabrey. And Nanette Fabrey basically was a Hollywood wannabe. She had a classically trained soprano voice. She was trained in opera. She tried Hollywood, and no one really knew what to do with her. When she gets a break, because Celeste Holm is in a musical that she wants to get out of. And the name of that musical was called Bloomer Girl. And what it called for was that the leading lady have long blonde hair, and Celeste Holm wanted to get out of her contract to make a movie that everyone said would get her an Academy Award nomination, and that was called Gentleman's Agreement. She's frustrated because in 30 days of battling with the producers, they're not letting her out of her contract. When she reread it again, read the clause about the long blonde hair, cut it short, dyed it red, and off she went. She was replaced by Nanette Fabrey, who, when just a year later, the musical High Button Shoes, about life in Atlantic City in the early 1900s, starring Phil Silvers, another Hollywood B actor, she and Phil Silvers take on the part, and she gets tremendous acclaim for doing it. Shortly thereafter, this is not a clip from 1948. I'm warning you, it's not a wonderful clip, but just to see a little bit of it to get a sense. This was when the Ed Sullivan Show was called The Talk of the Town. She was now in a second Broadway musical that has all but been forgotten because it had never been recorded due to a musician strike at the time, written by Kurt Weill. It was called Love Life. She was on Ed Sullivan. Remember, television was a very new medium in 1948, and she was really they were trying to help get tickets sold to the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a sheer delight to introduce this next young toast of the town, one of the most charming performers who's come to Broadway in a good many years. She's now starring and responsible for the smash hit success of Love Life. And you remember her from High Button Shoes. Young Nanette Fabrey making her first appearance on our show. So let's have a real nice welcome for her, please. And a pretty one, too. Hello, Nanette. Hello. Nice to have you.
Yesterday morning I did see blossoms on the apple tree. I took a breath and thought, could it be it's green time? Then I began to look around, and in every field I found trees were a-pushing up through the ground for green time. And sure enough, the bluebells twinkled April in the glen. And sure enough, I fell in love with love again. Then I started feeling awful bright, had a thought that hit me right. I'll have my honey dance me tonight and have a time to welcome in the green time.
Now, the sad thing about the musical Love Life, it was very well reviewed in its time. It was never filmed. And because it was never recorded, it's just disappeared from view. It was City Center Encores last year, staged it in New York for the first time in something like 70 years. So, you know, we all have to kind of be happy that let me stop that. I'll go back a minute. So Nanette Fabrey continues her career on stage when she is finally brought on by Sid Caesar. Just to show you her voice and her comic timing, there's this fabulous clip from the Sid Caesar show. The piece of music that she's singing actually comes from the musical No, No, Nanette, but that's not important. It's what goes on in the scene that is truly so much fun. And Nanette Fabrey became a major personality in the early 1950s because of her work not only on Broadway, but with Sid Caesar. Please mute yourself if you have not. truly a comical demonstration of what Nanette Fabrey could do. And, you know, Nanette Fabrey did a lot of Broadway touring in the era, but, you know, she was also deaf. And she became an activist for people who were hearing challenged and set up a foundation to help people who needed support and assistance to improve their hearing ability. In 1962, she took back to this Broadway stage again, introducing a part in a Broadway musical called Mr. President, written by Irving Berlin, again, with the idea that maybe they would do a satire of John and Jackie in the White House, much like the Call Me Madam was a satire of the Harry Truman era. It didn't quite have the energy and the resonance that people had thought would occur. And the result was in 1963, when they were searching for a leading lady to play Dolly Levi in the brand new musical Dolly Levi, A Very Exasperating Woman, they went to her, but Gower Champion, having seen her in the musical, realized that she was just not the right person for the part and asked her to audition. Well, she did audition, and she refused actually to audition, and that refusal cost her the part. Had she only gone and done it, it would have changed her career pretty significantly for the rest of her life. Meanwhile, let's talk about Patricia. I'm going to admit one person real quick. Patricia Morrison was also a Hollywood diva wannabe. She was out in Hollywood, she too, with classical operetta training. Please mute yourself. I think you just joined, and we're hearing things in the background. Patricia Morrison also was having a frustrating time in Hollywood. They didn't quite know what to do with her. And she auditions for Cole Porter for a musical that he's about to write with the Spivaks based upon The Taming of the Shrew. Taming of the Shrew was filmed for television in the early 1950s. And this is a clip from that where she, you'll get the gist. Please mute yourself if you just cleared your throat.
From A to Z above him, since love is blind and
Patricia Morrison played that part for years, and she was always being brought out to play it. And then she got herself hooked into another part, and that was Mrs. Anna, the King and I. It's great as an actress when you can have two parts that you're willing to do over and over and over and over and over. And by the way, Patricia Morrison died last year at the age of 103. She was living in Palm Springs.
She is my goods, my chattels, my horse, my ox, my ass, my anything. Touch her whoever dare. I'll bring mine action on the proudest he that stops my way in Padua. So kiss me, Kate. Oh, lovely moon, ere we start on a honeymoon. Oh, kiss me, Kate, darling devil divine, for now thou shalt ever be mine. I'll never be mine. So kiss me, Kate, oh, lovely moon, ere we start on a honeymoon. So kiss me, Kate, darling devil divine.
Kindly drop dead.
Now thou shalt ever be.
Oh, I shall never be.
Now thou shalt ever be. Yes, mine. Yes, mine. Yes, mine. Yes, mine. Oh, kiss me, Kate.
I'll cut your teeth.
Oh, please don't pout.
I'll knock you out.
My priceless prize.
I'll knock you out.
Oh, kiss me quick.
You're not welcome.
Oh, kiss me.
Louder.
Oh, kiss me.
Louder.
Oh, kiss me.
Louder.
Oh, kiss me.
You louse.
Oh, baby, that's a naughty word. Oh, kiss me. Kiss me.
Well, another great Broadway diva who you may not realize did an awful lot of Broadway musicals was Nancy Walker. She was discovered to star in a musical called On the Town in 1944. She went to Hollywood. She was in a bunch of college musicals. And the interesting thing about Nancy Walker was she totally kicked around for a very long time. It's amazing how we remember her really for roles later in her life as Rhoda Morgenstern's mother on the Mary Tyler Moore Show and on Rhoda, and also as the Clicker Picker Upper in the Bounty TV ads. She too was actually considered for the role of Dolly Levi, the soon-to-be made musical Dolly Levi, A Very Exasperating Woman. Except the problem was she was too short. And the hats that they were designing for the character to wear were almost as tall as she was. And they felt that she really didn't have the presence to carry off the performance up to the balcony. She was in a musical in the 1960s with Phil Silvers called Do Re Mi, but this is from 1944. This was when On the Town was running on Broadway, and this was a video filmed by the War Department to send out to the troops, because On the Town was about Navy people on patrol, on shore leave. So this was actually capturing Nancy Walker's 1944 performance. The film's a little fuzzy because of the nature of it, but it certainly is worth seeing to just see how they really wanted to present this to the troops.
They kind of especially like my first number, so I thought I'd like to do it kind of especially for you. How see, and I'm on the town and on the make. Hey, come here. This guy's on a 24-hour pass, and he wants to see the sights of New York. But, I think he's kind of cute. So... Well, let's go up to my place.
Oh, I'd like to, lady, but...
Oh, come on. I'm young, free, and highly attainable.
Look, miss, for years, my dad's been telling me about all the wonderful sights there are to see in New York, and, well, now I'm here.
All right. I'll take you any place you want to go. Then, up to my place. The same to you.
My father told me, Chip, my boy, there'll come a time when you leave home. If you should ever hit New York, be sure to see the Hippodrome.
The Hippodrome!
The Hippodrome.
Did I hear right? Did you say the Hippodrome?
Yes, you heard right. Yes, I said the hip. Say, what did you stop for?
It ain't there anymore. The lights have all gone dark. It's now an auto park. Come up to my place.
No, Chambers Street. They told me I could see New York in all its spreading strength and power from the city's highest spot on top, the famous Woolworth Tower.
The Woolworth Tower.
The Woolworth Tower.
Beat me, Daddy. Did you say the Woolworth Tower?
I won't beat you, but I said the Wool. Did you stop for hey what?
That ain't the highest spot. You're just a little late. We've got the Empire State. Let's go to my place.
Let's go to Cleopatra's Needle.
Let's go to my place.
Let's see Wanamaker's store.
Let's go to my place.
Go to Lindy's, go to Lou
Go
Chow's.
to my place.
Let's see Radio City and Herald Square.
Let's go to my place.
Go to Reuben.
Go to my place.
Go to Macy's.
Go to my place.
The Roxy.
Go to my place.
Royce.
My place.
Kimball.
My place.
Flatiron.
My place.
Building.
My place.
Hippodrome.
My place. Wait a minute. Well, this isn't in the show, but these gals are for you. Hello.
It's amazing how they did all of this to package. In any event, let's talk about Gertrude Lawrence. I hope people remember who she was. She was a very elegant, sophisticated, stylish, and nasty star. She was a diva of great proportions, and we truly owe her The King and I. If it weren't for her, we never would have had it written, and it was her sheer determination that created this opportunity. She was a British, Broadway, she was a British West End star, and she did create a lot of work that if it weren't for her, we might just not have as something familiar. Her first American musical was in 1927, the Gershwin musical, Okay, and she introduced this.
There's a saying old says that love is blind. Still we're often told to seek and ye shall find. So I'm looking for a certain boy I have in mind. Looking everywhere, haven't found him yet.
this is from 1931. Gertrude Lawrence will tell you what it is. It's just unbelievable to even see this. As you also notice, there was a picture of her with Noel Coward. She did Private Lives with Noel Coward and many other of the plays that he wrote.
Ladies and gentlemen, for the first talking picture that I've ever made in England, I've chosen to sing a song by a British composer, Mr. George Posford, who will play it for me at the piano. When it became known that I was searching for songs by British composers, I received over 2,000 manuscripts in 1 week. Not bad. This one, which I've chosen to sing to you, I hope you will like. By history I'm told, in stories of old, in the days when lives were bold, rose in a day, and fell just that way. Seems that I was also bought and sold. I've climbed to the top of mountains high. I built all my hopes way in the sky, but I tumbled down upon the ground. You're my decline and fall.
Okay, that just gives you a sense of who she was. I'm going to try to admit this person. I don't know whether it will work. In any event, Lady in the Dark was a very groundbreaking musical. The idea, directed by Moss Hart, was about a woman who was the Amanda Priestley of her day. She ran a fashion magazine, and she could not decide what to put on the cover, and she was having such a difficult time with this that she goes to see a psychiatrist who fixes all of her problems in 2 weeks. Well, we don't know, that's not realistic, but in 1940, psychiatry was a brand new emerging medical practice. And you'll notice in the picture at the top, Danny Kaye, just over her shoulder on her left, he breaks out in a performance there singing a song called Tchaikovsky with all the Russian composers in breakneck speed. This is Gertrude Lawrence singing a pretty famous song from Lady in the Dark, which I think you may remember.
And Jenny points a moral with which we cannot quarrel, as you will find. Jenny made her mind up when she was 3. She herself was going to trim the Christmas tree. Christmas Eve she lit the candles, threw the tapers away. Little Jenny was an orphan on Christmas Day. Jenny made her mind up when she was 12 that into foreign languages she would delve. But at 17 to Vassar it was quite a blow that in 27 languages she couldn't say no. Poor Jenny, bright as a penny, her equal would be hard to find. To Jenny I'm beholden, her heart was big and golden, but she wouldn't make up her mind.
Foreign languages she couldn't say no.
Jenny made her mind up at 22. To get herself a husband was the thing to do. So she got herself all dolled up in her satins and furs. She got herself a husband, but he wasn't hers. Jenny made her mind up at 39. She would take a trip to the Argentine. She was only on vacation, but the Latins agree. Jenny was the one who started the good neighbor policy.
Poor Jenny, bright as a penny, her equal would be hard to find.
For passion doesn't vanish in Portuguese or Spanish, and she wouldn't make up her mind.
She instituted the good neighbor policies.
Jenny made her mind up at 75. She would live to be the oldest woman alive. But gin and rum and whiskey play such funny tricks. and Jenny kicked the bucket at 76. Jenny points a moral with which you cannot quarrel, makes a lot of common sense. Jenny and her saga prove that you are gaga if you don't keep sitting on the fence. Jenny and her story point the way to glory to all men and womankind. Anyone with vision comes to this decision. Don't make up, you shouldn't make up, you mustn't make up, or never make up. Anyone with vision comes to this decision. Don't make up your
Those were lyrics written by Ira Gershwin, by the way. But Gertrude Lawrence in the story The King and I is really so important. She had read Anna and the King of Siam and had seen the movie with Rex Harrison and Irene Dunne when she decided this would be a perfect movie musical for her. Well, you know, that was kind of a stretch, and she calls Cole Porter and asks Cole Porter if he would consider writing the music for this musical, and he told her she was out of her mind and he wasn't interested. She then makes an appointment to come see Rodgers and Hammerstein, hops on the Queen Mary, sails across, and they really don't want anything to do with her. They know her reputation, that she's a diva, she's demanding, she's impossible, but she makes a really strong case. They also wrote to formula that they had an A couple and a B couple, which would be a primary and secondary love story, that there would usually be a theme of racism and classism, and they do everything they can to dissuade her and let her know that they didn't see any of that in the novel, which they thought was far too dark for musical theater storytelling. But she argues with them, and she literally then says, take the script, take it to your wife, and let them tell you what they think. Rodgers and Hammerstein's wives both said, she's got a point here, and the rest is somewhat history. Well, they already had one diva, Gertrude Lawrence, so they had to find another person to play the king, and they initially went to Alfred Drake, but Alfred Drake's demands were even more demanding than Gertrude Lawrence's, so they had no idea what to do, and it was Mary Martin who recommended that they audition a young actor who she had met in a play she had been in, and who was now very successfully directing in television, and his name, of course, was Yul Brynner. Gertrude Lawrence, when the play opened, she wasn't well. She had developed pleurisy, and then after it opened, and she did get respectable reviews for her portrayal of Mrs. Anna. The New York Times even saying of her, for someone who could chew the scenery pretty aggressively, she managed to put a big restraint on herself and was really owning the role beautifully. But about 6 or 7 weeks in, the stage manager calls Richard Rodgers and says, you got to come in here and check Gertie's performance out. She's really not doing well. And Rodgers goes to a Saturday matinee, sees what he sees, and realizes that there's something that has to be done. So between the afternoon and the evening performance, he goes to see her backstage, and he says to her, Gertrude, look, you know, you're not doing yourselves any favors here. Maybe we should figure out a way to give you the ability to get out of this with grace, because your reputation shouldn't be destroyed by what audiences are seeing in your current performances like today. She was devastated, didn't quite know what to do, and she was thinking about it. And when she came back Monday night to the next performance, she actually collapsed on stage. They took her to the hospital in an ambulance, obviously, and what they discovered then was that she had advanced stages of liver cancer. When she did realize she was never coming back to the musical, she made 2 requests. The first was that she be buried in that dress, the dress that she wears in the number Shall We Dance, when she and the King of Siam show the British what an educated and sophisticated people the Thai people really are. And she makes another request that Yul Brynner, now if you'll notice on the placard on the right, Yul Brynner's name is way down below everybody else's. He wasn't any big deal at that point in time. She said, the king is the important character in this musical, and his name, I want it to go where my name sits. And she made them sign an agreement to that before she died. And of course, this is what made Yul Brynner into a star. Just to give you a snippet, this is what the original cast recording was recorded with Gertrude Lawrence.
Whenever I feel afraid, I hold my head erect and whistle a happy tune so no one will suspect I'm afraid. While shivering in my shoes, I strike a careless pose and whistle a happy tune, and no one ever knows I'm afraid. The result of this deception is very strange to tell, for when I fool the people I fear, I fool myself as well. I whistle a happy tune, and every single time the happiness in the tune convinces me that I'm not afraid. Make believe you're brave and the trick will take you far. You may be as brave as you make believe you are. You may be as brave as you make believe you are. While shivering in my shoes, I strike a careless pose and whistle a happy tune, and no one ever knows I'm afraid. The result of this deception is very strange to tell, for when I fool the people I fear, I fool myself as well. I whistle a happy tune, and every single time the happiness in the tune convinces me that I'm not afraid. Make believe you're brave and the trick will take you far. You may be as brave as you make believe you are. You may be as brave as you make believe you are.
Well, we now have to talk about the grande dame of the era, and that's Ethel Merman. Ethel, of course, grew up in Astoria, Queens. No one is exactly sure. At the time, she never really pinpointed her age, but she was born somewhere between 1908 and 1912, and her parents were very strict, very dour German people who insisted that their daughter have a very, very good career to always fall back on. She went to secretarial school. She was a crack typist, and she could take shorthand faster than anybody. She was often taken to see vaudeville at a young age, and she would go to amateur singing events, and she would win all kinds of awards. Well, the way she got her big break happened because she was singing in a saloon in Astoria when she went and auditioned for a casino on the South Shore of Long Island, and she was discovered by Jimmy Durante, who begged her to give up her day job. Her parents were absolutely fraught with despair that their sensible German-raised daughter would suddenly try to have a career in show business and what would become of her. But it's Jimmy Durante who then gets her into vaudeville and hears about the Gershwins looking for a brassy broad type to sing a number in a new show that they're writing called Girl Crazy. She goes and she auditions for George Gershwin, and he is absolutely convinced she's a voice that he wants in his new show. This is a picture of Ethel Merman from Girl Crazy. Look at all those women on stage. I mean, you can't afford to have a cast that size today. But, you know, I Got Rhythm is what put Ethel Merman on the map, because you could hear her in the balcony 6 theaters away. She really, and George Gershwin opening night was conducting with his preferred musicians, Benny Goodman, Gene Krupa, you name it. Those were the guys in his pit at the time. And he tells her, Ethel, do you realize what you've just done? And she says, no, I have no idea. He said, whatever it is, don't take a singing lesson. And she never did for the rest of her life. She goes off to Hollywood after this, and they don't really know what to do with her, but her mother will not let her go by herself. So her mother goes with her, and they rent an apartment building, in an apartment building, living above a very interesting movie star at the time, Mae West. And Mae West encourages her and helps her develop a style of brassiness that she continues with for quite some time in her career. She then is invited, she goes back and forth between New York and Hollywood, when she ultimately goes back to New York and stars in a production produced by the man Vincent Freely about a group of people on an ocean liner. The words and music written by Cole Porter, the script by Bolton and Woodhouse. This is from a crazy version of Anything Goes, filmed in 1953. But Ethel became a mainstay of early television as well. So we have a lot of footage of her that really helps us understand bringing Ethel Merman to the public of the world who would have never seen her.
Oh, no. Last week, Reno Sweeney suddenly announced she was quitting the bright lights to sail for England. She's going over to the other side to get married and settle down. Now, wait a minute, folks. The crowd is getting excited. We're all looking in one direction. Can it be? Yes, it is. Here she comes now. The one and only Reno Sweeney.
Conservative duds fool you. It's still Reno.
Reno, are you really going through with it?
Am I? Listen, all you Broadway wise guys. From here in, Reno Sweeney is a lady, and I'll rap the first guy that says I ain't. Oh, I want you to meet my big moment, the happy groom-to-be, Sir Evelyn Oakley. Here, honey, mumble a little something.
How'd you do?
Yeah, that's enough. They'll think it's static. Ain't it, doll? I just love a man of mystery. That's why I fell for Evie. I can't understand a word he says.
Gee, Reno, to go from Reno Sweeney to Lady Oakley, it seems almost impossible.
Listen, honey, nothing's impossible. In this day and age, anything goes. Times have changed, and we've often rewound the clock since the Puritans got a shock when they landed on Plymouth Rock. If today any shock they should try to stem, instead of landing on Plymouth Rock would land on them. In olden days, a glimpse of stocking was looked on as something shocking. Now, heaven knows, anything goes. Good authors, too, who once knew better words, now only use four-letter words, writing prose. Anything goes. The world has gone mad today, and good's bad today, and black's white today, and day's night today, and those guys today that women prize today are just silly gigolos. So even out in high society, can't forget propriety, goodness knows. Anything goes. The world is topsy-turvy, non-conventional, technicolor, high-potential. Love, love, love is here to stay. And anything, the world is ever, ever changing. Anything, try to do some rearranging. Anything, anything, anything goes. Brother, anything goes.
Ethel had a style. I mean, what you just witnessed was her choreographic ability. That's everything she did always. But her next musical was Red Hot and Blue. Now, it featured a song that I'll show you in just a moment. This one, if you'll notice, starred Jimmy Durante and Bob Hope. And you'll also notice that another musical she did was "Du Barry Was a Lady." That's Bert Lahr. Bert Lahr had just come back from filming in Hollywood a movie I think you've all heard of, The Wizard of Oz, and he was devastated that MGM did not offer him a contract. And the result was he really felt very self-conscious that maybe he wasn't as talented as he had estimated himself to be, and it was Merman who pulled him up by the straps continually. But this clip, again, it's a very early television clip. Ethel Merman on a variety show singing a famous song from Red Hot and Blue. She was still performing in Annie Get Your Gun when this was done. So this was filmed about 1948 or 49.
And I'd like to sing for you a number that I had the pleasure of introducing in a show, Anything Goes. I Get a Kick Out of You. My story is much too sad to be told, but practically everything leaves me totally cold. The only exception I know is the case when I'm out on a quiet spree, fighting vainly the old ennui, and I suddenly turn and see your no kick from champagne. Mere alcohol doesn't thrill me at all. So tell me, why should it be true that I get a kick out of you? Some get a kick from cocaine. I'm sure that if I took even one sniff, that would bore me terrifically too. Yet I get a kick out of you. I get a kick every time I see you're standing there before me. I get a kick, so it's clear to me you obviously don't adore me. I get no kick in a plane, flying too high with some guy in the skies. My idea of nothing to do. Yet I get a kick out of you.
She starred next in a musical called Panama Hattie. Oh, such a sophisticated story about a brassy broad who owns a saloon in the Canal Zone. And she falls in love with the young sailor, and the whole plot is, would she be good enough for his mother? But of course, her big break, another big musical she created happens in 1946. The idea of taking the story of Annie Oakley and Frank Butler, who, by the way, when they gave up show business, they lived not too far from here on a farm in Charles County in southern Maryland. Annie Oakley was a little bit of a far-fetched, fictionalized version of Annie Oakley, but they knew it was going to be just perfect for Ethel. Irving Berlin was not the original writer at all. It was supposed to be Jerome Kern and Dorothy Fields, but Jerome Kern has a heart attack and dies on the streets of Manhattan and in the midst of starting to write Annie Get Your Gun. The producers, Rogers and Hammerstein, at this point don't quite know what to do. So they go to Irving Berlin, and he doesn't know if he can really do this or not. And over the weekend, he writes 5 songs for Annie Get Your Gun that demonstrate that he really can. In 1965, Annie Get Your Gun was revived by what was then called the Music Theater of Lincoln Center. excuse me, taking original performers who could still recreate their roles that had made them famous on Broadway. And this one, it was revived in 1965 or 66, was actually nicknamed, because Ethel Merman was now 55 years old, not Annie Get Your Gun, but Granny Get Your Gun. And this was from a television recreation of that event.
Taking stock of what I have and what I haven't, what do I find? The things I got will keep me satisfied. Checking off on what I have and what I haven't, what do I find? A healthy balance on the credit side. Got no diamonds, got no pearls, still I think I'm a lucky girl. I got the sun in the morning and the moon at night. Got no mansion, got no yacht, still I'm happy with what I got. I got the sun in the morning and the moon at night. Sunshine gives me a lovely day. Moonlight gives me the Milky Way. Got no checkbooks, got no banks, still I'd like to express my thanks. I got the sun in the morning and the moon at night. And with the sun in the morning and the moon in the evening, I'm all right. Got no butler, got no maid, still I think I've been overpaid. I got the sun in the morning and the moon at night. Sun in the morning and the moon at night. Got no silver, got no gold, what I got can't be bought or sold. I got the sun in the morning and the moon at night. I got the sun in the morning and the moon at night. Sunshine gives me a lovely day. Moonlight gives me the Milky Way. Got no heirlooms for my kin, made no will, but when I cash in, I leave the sun in the morning and the moon at night. And with the sun in the morning and the moon in the evening, I'm all right. Got no mansion, got no yacht, still I'm happy with what I got. Sun in the morning and the moon at night. Got no silver, got no gold, what I got can't be bought or sold. I got the sun in the morning and the moon at night. Sunshine gives me a lovely day. Moonlight gives me the Milky Way. Got no checkbooks, got no banks, still I like to express my thanks. I got the sun in the morning and the moon at night. And with the sun in the morning and the moon in the evening, I'm all right. Sunshine gives me a lovely day. Moonlight.
Sorry about
Moonlight
that.
gives me the Milky Way. Sun in the morning and the moon at night. Sun in the morning and the moon at night.
And of course, she also created the role of Sally Adams in the spoof of Harry Truman and Pearl Mesta, and her being appointed the ambassador to Luxembourg, the first female ambassador, and everybody thought that was absolutely ridiculous. And Call Me Madam was a fun entertainment at the time. And this is a clip from Ethel in the movie. When you see it, you can sort of figure out why Ethel didn't make a whole lot of movies. She didn't really project well on screen. She was always playing at the balcony, and when the camera was right in front of her, it was a little tough. But, you know, this is that great number from Call Me Madam that we all can enjoy.
Look, kid, these things happen to all of us. Nothing could be as bad as... Ken, what's happened to you?
I hear singing, and there's no one there. I smell blossoms, and the trees are bare. All day long I seem to walk on air. I wonder why. I wonder why. I keep tossing in my sleep at night, and what's more, I've lost my appetite. Stars that used to twinkle in the skies are twinkling in my eyes. I wonder why.
You don't need analyzing. It is not so surprising that you feel very strange but nice. Your heart goes pitter-patter. I know just what's the matter, because I've been there once or twice. Put your head on my shoulder. You need someone who's older, or rub down with a velvet glove. There is nothing you can take to relieve that pleasant ache. You're not sick, you're just in love. You don't need analyzing. It's not so surprising that you feel very strange but nice. Your heart goes pitter-patter. I know just what's the matter, because I've been there once or twice. Put your head on my shoulder. Need someone who's older, rub down with a velvet glove. There is nothing you can take to relieve that pleasant ache. You're not sick, you're just in love. Come on now, snap out of it.
I hear singing.
But you just said that.
I know, but I hear singing, and there's no one there.
That you feel very strange but nice. Your heart goes pitter-patter. I know just what's the matter, because I've been there once or twice. Put your head on my shoulder. You need someone who's older, or rub down with a velvet glove. There's nothing you can take to relieve that pleasant ache. You're not sick, you're just in love.
Well, Ethel was next in a musical on Broadway. It's 7 years later. She does a couple of movies in between. One of them was There's No Business Like Show Business. She's married and remarried. And she's in this musical called Happy Hunting with Fernando Lamas. It was a disaster for her. She and Fernando Lamas just did not get along at all. They had no chemistry. And the whole experience was one that she wanted to totally forget about.
We belong to a mutual admiration society. My baby and me. We belong to a mutual admiration society. She thinks I'm beautiful and smart. I think that she's a work of art. She says that I am heaven sent and I'm her fan club president. I tell her I'm so proud of her. She says that she is proud of her, and that's the way we pass
my baby and me. Oh, we belong to a mutual admiration society. We belong to a mutual admiration society. My baby and me. We belong to a mutual admiration society. I say, oh, you're the sweetest one. She says, no, you're the sweetest one.
She claims that I'm a natural witch. I say it's just the opposite.
I think her singing is divine. She says it's not as good as mine. And we go on like that from night till dawn. My baby and me, oh, we belong to a mutual admiration society. I think she's absolutely great. She says, oh, that's a family trait. I say that kind of flattery will get you every place with me. The way we carry on, it tends to just embarrass all our friends. And that is how we'll still be years from now. And that is how we'll still be years from now. My baby and me. My baby and me. My baby and me.
Well, Gypsy was going to become the crown and glory of Ethel Merman's long performing career. She wanted to do this because she needed a hit. After Happy Hunting, which she felt was a major disaster, she truly wanted something that had to really save her career. The play was originally going to be written by Arthur Lawrence with words and music by Stephen Sondheim, but because Ethel had just done Happy Hunting with a songwriting team who had never written a Broadway score before, she refused Sondheim for words and music and would only allow him to write the lyrics. She thought his lyrics were pure genius. Jerome Robbins felt he was able to coax a performance out of Merman by treating her like gold, which was not the way he usually treated most people. But he really was able to get Merman to do something that was always there underneath the surface. And she could play the part of this hard-driving mother who was willing to destroy the lives of her children for the dreams that she had never realized, and created one of the greatest roles ever on the Broadway stage. Ethel never missed a performance. She was demanding, she was focused, she knew what she needed to do, and she constantly delivered it. Ethel also didn't suffer fools, and she would not tolerate bad behavior in the theater. This picture is Ethel Merman and Sandra Church, the 20-year-old actress who was going to play Gypsy Rose Lee on the Broadway stage. And when Sandra Church started to have an affair with Julie Stein, Ethel stopped speaking to her for 6 months because she said that's bad behavior in the theater. And when the affair was over, that's finally when Ethel spoke to her again. Hello, Dolly was actually written for Ethel Merman. When they envisioned taking The Matchmaker and turning it into a musical, it was for Ethel that they wanted. But at the point in time when they approached her, she had just finished 3 years in Gypsy. She was absolutely worn out, and she had just decided that it wasn't really something she could do. But she promised David Merrick that when he was 6 months out from closing the show, she would go in and take the last 6 months and then even take it on the road. She was true to her word, but did not realize it was going to be 7 years later. Well, that's the story of Ethel pretty much. And I just want to give anybody a chance to ask questions. You can unmute yourself if that's what you want to do to ask, or there's so many of you I'd have to scroll between the screens. But I'd love to ask questions or hear what y'all have to say or anything at all. I'm here.
Yeah, I saw.
Hi, Tony. How are you?
Hi. Oh, I'm well. How are you, Steve?
Good.
I saw Ethel Merman as an older lady in Annie Get Your Gun at the National Theater.
Oh, yeah.
So it must have been, what, the 60s or early 70s?
It was 1966. I saw it too. I mean, it was a great thing.
We took my grandfather because he loved Ethel Merman, and it was so exciting. It didn't matter that she was old.
It wasn't. You went to see Ethel Merman. Actually, yeah. I feel really lucky. I got to see her 3 times. One of the times was that one. And in the mid-70s, she was very willing to do anything at all to keep working and to do what she did best. And she and Carol O'Connor did an evening at Shady Grove Music Fair in the 1970s. I mean, it was just absolutely terrific.
And the days under the tent?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I think by then it was already in the hard top. But
yeah.
It was
wonderful.
just exciting.
I don't think her voice really change. Her voice didn't like so many singers.
Never lost her voice.
She had that
she
power.
was singing all the time. She always was willing to do whatever. In fact, there was an album called Ethel Merman Sings Disco. If any of you can find it and put it out today, it's worth a fortune.
Wow, she was great. She was really great.
Anybody want to know anything else?
No, Steve, I just want
Alan, go ahead. Florence, you're next. Alan, go ahead.
I just want to say how great these talks are.
It's really
We're
fun.
truly doing a mitzvah for those of us that have to stay home and can't get to Broadway.
I really appreciate that. We've all had a tough time, and some of you have been so wonderful to me. This is the best thing I can do for you, and I'm going to do one next Friday. Next Friday we'll add in something. Alan, go ahead. You're next.
When Gertrude Lawrence was not performing up to snuff, and they came to her, did it turn out because she was ill and didn't realize it that was bringing her down, or was it?
They had no idea what was wrong. I mean, her singing was falling flat. She couldn't get through the songs. They really had no idea. And it was, and again, she was thinking it over. She, Richard Rodgers really wanted to replace her because, and do it with dignity, I want to add. And it was that Monday night when she collapsed on stage, when they rushed her to the hospital, they all realized they had no idea.
Yeah.
Steve?
Yeah, go ahead, Joan. You have a question?
I don't have a question. I just have to tell you how fabulous you are.
Oh,
you are top banana. What you have given us takes us through days and days to look forward to your programs, and I know everybody agrees with me.
Yes,
we're all from that time frame.
Yes.
Walk back and to
I completely agree.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I agree.
From the bottom of my heart, you are top banana. God bless you.
Yes, applause.
Thank you.
I think everybody agrees.
Will you send us the link for next week?
Yeah, I'm going to send it in a little while. It's going to be a continuation of this. We'll focus on Mary Martin and Carol Channing.
Oh, wow.
So that'll be fun. And then I'm going to show you a couple other things that are kind of interesting. Sammy, I'm glad you're there because I saw you had trouble getting in a while back. So I'm glad you're on. This is just one of those crazy things. And what I'm going to try to do is do this as often as I can, weekly, until we can all get out and be live again.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Zena Mason and Paul. Paul's here.
I have a question for you, Steve.
Who's asking me? Tony, is that
Tony,
you?
yeah.
Go ahead.
So on my 21st birthday, my parents took me to see Hello, Dolly with Pearl Bailey and Cab Calloway at the National Theater. Did you see that?
It was at the National Theater.
Yeah, an all-black cast.
There's an interesting thing about that. David Merrick, wanted to put all these leading ladies in who were Hollywood has-beens somewhat. And one of the people that they had put in was Phyllis Diller.
Oh.
And she was not selling tickets. And Hello, Dolly had gotten to about 1,600 performances. And David Merrick wanted Hello, Dolly to surpass the run of My Fair Lady. He wasn't quite sure what to do when he got this idea. Why don't we do an all-black Hello, Dolly? And they tried it out in Washington. And you have to remember, 1967 was very deep into the civil rights era. The riots were happening in major cities. This was a major, major risk. So they figured Pearl Bailey, and they also had to have an artist that wasn't offensive, which is sick, to a white audience.
Right.
And they were afraid to have a mixed cast. It had to be either all black or whatever. So it was Cab Calloway and Pearl Bailey in Hello, Dolly. And Pearl Bailey, by the way, who was always considered this ambassador of goodwill, she was one nasty, tough cookie. And she would, there was a, at her curtain call, she would stand and talk to the audience, But she would always say to somebody, listen, would you run up to my dressing room? I want to show the audience my book. And this happened night after night after night. And finally, the guy she would always ask went and put the book in the side of the wings. And he came right out and she said to him, if you ever do that again and don't give me that 6 minutes to talk to the audience, you're fired.
Oh, dear.
Barbara, I see you have your hand up, so go ahead.
Yeah. I just want to reiterate what everybody else is saying. It's so great to see you. I can't wait till we get up to New York again.
I know. Oh, God.
Great to listen to, and it's wonderful.
I'm reading something.
Very well.
Somebody, I am going to tell you, I have recorded this, and if I can get it up on YouTube the right way, if you want to send it out to anybody, I will. What some people have done, which is really a problem, it was a problem this morning, is they share a link, and I'm very careful controlling who gets in, and I only sent out 100 RSVPs, but I had more people getting in that couldn't get in who had RSVP'd. So I know it's none of you, but whoever's doing it, please let's all take the RSVPs. And the other thing is, I had some people I didn't let in because they came in late, and it becomes very distracting.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to suggest is, if you know you really want to be in with me, please try to be in by 10:25. Then that way you know you're in. And the people who come late, well, they do as best they can. Linda, are you trying to ask me a question there?
Yeah, my question really, and maybe you'll deal with it next week. Do you think in today's world that you can have divas the way you did in the 40s or maybe the 50s?
Well, we do have them. It's just different. So let me explain that. For example, you have Idina Menzel, who's maybe one of the biggest divas you could come up with today. I have a friend who's a director who directed her in the stage concert version of Chess in London with Josh Groban. They had par contracts, and she did everything she could to be more obnoxious than you could imagine. We have them. I'll tell you another one was Lee Michelle, who's quite a diva. A young girl, she was on Glee, had a Broadway career, doing other things out west in television and so forth.
Awakening.
These people, they get very full of themselves very, very quickly. You know, look, Patti LuPone, she's not the easiest one on earth either. And then you have people like Bernadette Peters, who people think is absolutely terrific. Christine Ebersol, another one who's absolutely terrific. But, you know, in the days of these women, you had Hollywood and you had Broadway and you had summer stock and you had touring. There's so much more media today that it's spread out that much further, where you don't see the same people in all of the same places. I think that's the difference. And a lot of the Broadway shows now are not written to be star vehicles. They're written to be brands on their own, where you go because of the show. It doesn't really matter who the actress is that's in it. And nobody was a bigger diva than Bette Midler in Hello, Dolly. I mean, she carried on, I understand, unbelievably. I mean, justifiably, it was fine. But the people I know who were in the cast told me they loved it the nights Donna Murphy was on, and they loved working with Bernadette, and you never knew what you were going to get when Bette came into the room. Both Donna Murphy, I mean, Bernadette Peters did all the performances. She didn't have to have someone covering 2 performances a week for her because she didn't have the stamina. So, no, Broadway's not for sissies. All right, one last question. Barbara, is your hand still up, or did I get your question?
I have a question about chess.
Yeah, Florence, go ahead.
I saw chess in London when it was playing there and loved it. And my husband and I came back, and then when it was playing on Broadway, we went to see it again. And it was like a different show. And I know it didn't do well on Broadway. What happened?
Well, you know, those of you who've been to London with me, we went to see a show there called Everybody's Talking About Jamie. And it's a big hit in London. And we were talking about there's no way it would transfer because it's so British in its style. One of the problems with chess was that the story doesn't really make sense in real terms. And they've tried to tinker with the book because the music is so phenomenal that, you know, it's developed this cult following, but the script itself just doesn't really play And that's sad. I think you can probably find the concert version with Josh Groban on YouTube. I'm going to ask my friend if it's there. And that's using the original script. And, you know, chess was always done with lots of video and all of that because of the chess match. It was an $8 million disaster on Broadway in the 1990s.
Wow. It was great in London.
Open. Yes, Sylvia, question.
Yes, I think I saw The King and I after Gertrude Lawrence. So who took over for her?
Great question. Initially, it was Celeste Holm.
Whoa.
There was an understudy actually for a while, Constance Cummings.
That's who I saw.
But they needed to have a name because it was very early in the run. So Rodgers and Hammerstein pulled in a chit. They made Celeste Holm, frankly. You know, Annie Get Your Gun is what made her whole career. So they went to her and said, we really need you to pay us back for what we did for you. And she went into it for something like 6 or 8 weeks. Constance Cummings then went back on. Patricia Morrison took it on. But it was Celeste Holm for a period of time after Gertrude Lawrence went away. In fact, I have a program. My in-laws went to see The King and I, and it was with Celeste Holm. And I have that playbill.
Have you kept your playbills?
I have playbill. Well, I mean, you all know what's behind me. These are my autographs. I have 4 notebooks full of original playbills. The ones that are original casts are sort of worth something, and they're really worth something if they're autographed. But if they're just run-of-the-mill playbills from touring companies, they're probably not so exciting or worth anything. But, you know, whatever. My kids can fight over them. Yeah, Joan, go ahead.
When did Carol Channing take over Hello, Dolly?
She originated Hello, Dolly, and that's a story that I'll save for next week.
Okay, I'm waiting for it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm looking to see if anybody's asking me anything else because there's 3 or 4 screens, and I think everybody's great. Thank you all for being here today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next week.
Thank you.
For the
See you
invite.
next week.
Okay.
Take
Thanks.
care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.